Alright, you know what time it is. Time for Overwatch League predictions. Part 2, Week 3, Stage number 2. So, we are actually just about, wait, no, because there's 4 stages, 5. We're getting pretty darn close to the halfway point of Overwatch League. After the matches this weekend, or these next 2 days, everyone will have 16 matches played. So, and there's 40 total before the playoffs start. So we're starting to get a real, the playoff picture and what teams are going to contend, which ones are not, is getting clearer. So, before I do my predictions, I'm going to spend a little less time on the predictions today to talk about the standings and how I think they might change or stay the same going forward. So, number 12, at 0-16 with a map differential of -49, you got the Shanghai Dragons. Number 11, Florida Mayhem, 1-13 with a map differential of -34, which means they've lost 34 maps and they've won. Just so you know, with the map differential, if it's minus, they've lost more than they've won. If it's plus, obviously they've won more than they lost. Dallas Fuel are 10th with 5-10 with a map differential of -14. You got the San Fran Shock, who are also 5-10, but they have a map differential of -9. Then you have the Los Angeles Gladiators, who are 8th at 7-8 with a map differential of -2. You got Boston Uprising are 7th. They're 8-7 with a map differential of +6. You got the Philadelphia Fusion taking up the first playoff spot at number 6. They're at 9-6 with a map differential of actually -1. Interesting. The Houston Outlaws are 5th. They're also 9-6, but their map differential is +13. 4th, London Spitfire. They're 10-4, map differential of +21. Los Angeles Valiant are 3rd. They're 11-5 with a map differential of +16. Second is the New York Excelsior. They're 12-2, map differential of +30. And then in first is the Dynasty, who are 13-3 with a map differential of +23. A couple things to note about these standings, though. They did a thing this week where some teams, the last couple weeks, every team that played on Wednesday either played on Friday or Saturday. Nobody played on Wednesday and Thursday. No one played on back-to-back days. This week is different. You had the Dragons, the Valiant, and the Dynasty all playing both of their matches already. So that's where you got your difference. Teams like the London Spitfire, the New York Excelsior, and the Florida Mayhem have not played yet. So the standings could be a little bit skewed in that way. So you do have to keep that in mind. Barring any huge upset, like multiple huge upsets, the Excelsior will be back in number 1 by the end of this week. And teams like the Spitfire will probably be back in 3rd over the Valiant. But those are pretty much your major differences that could happen. So, are there any huge shocks in these standings? Do I think there's going to be any teams that are going way up or way down? Do I think any teams are out of the playoff race already? Stuff like that. This one I'm going to quickly go over. So, teams that are out at this point, with 26 matches left for the Mayhem and 24 for the Dragons, I think those two guys, they're done. Those two teams. They, especially with their map differentials, -34 for Mayhem, -49 for Shanghai, that's huge. That is not something you can overcome very easily or at all. Neither of the teams have really had their acquisitions come in yet, so they're still waiting on the reinforcements. And I mean, while they wait, they've just fallen further and further behind. Shanghai has their matches where they compete and they're very close, but they just can't find a way to win one. And the Mayhem are kind of the same way. They usually take a map against most teams, but they can't ever get the win. They've only beaten the Dragons, sitting at 1-13, and when I go into the predictions, don't have huge hopes for them winning their second anytime in the near future. So I think that the Mayhem and the Dragons, their Overwatch League Season 1 playoff hopes are about done. I think at this point it's about trying to come up with better strategies, trying to figure out which players you're going to want to keep moving forward, which ones you might not want to keep going forward with the other stages. And with them, they're just looking for improvement over the stages. I think they've both acquired a decent amount of players. And I think they're definitely going to use those players because they really have nothing to lose at this point. It can't get much worse for these guys. I mean, the Shanghai's they've won 8 maps, they've lost 57, and they've tied 1. So it's just, much as I hate to say it, and I don't want to like shit on any of the players or anything like that, but they just haven't, as a whole, their team has not been cohesive, and they've not prepared to win. So, those two teams, like I said, they're just, I don't see them competing. I think, pretty much, I mean, if Shanghai won all their last 24 maps, they'd be 24-16. And they're not going to win their last 24 matches. So, those guys, they're more like, we're going to get ready, we're going to try to find a better team, like, mesh together, we're going to put in some of our new players and see if they can start to improve the team, and then we're going to move forward with Season 2. And there are the stage playoffs, so maybe if they improve enough, maybe they can compete for like a stage playoff, which is like top 3 at the end of each stage, because they don't take the other stages in consideration for that. So maybe they can do a thing like that, try to push for playoffs on there. But I mean, given where they are, that's very unlikely. So, but besides those two teams, I don't think anyone else is out of it yet. I think the San Francisco Shock and the Dallas Fuel, who are both 5 and 10, I think they're in the danger zone. If they go 5 and 10 again over their next 15, then I mean at 10 and 20, your chances are looking pretty freaking slim. Probably 0 actually. So they're teams that they're still in it. Their map differentials aren't that terrible, but they really need to start putting together some wins, which is very hard because there's so many good teams in the league. So yeah, the Shock, they have Super and Sinatra are going to be back in about a week and a half. They'll be available because they'll be old enough. So that's something to look forward to if you're Shock fans. But honestly, I mean, Sinatra's the DPS. He'd be replacing Dante because he's a Tracer main, and Dante's been playing really, really well this stage. And he played well in Stage 1, too. He wasn't really their issue. So, is that going to help that much? Super, I think he's a flex tank, if I remember correctly. So, I think he would go in for Nevix. He might be a main tank. I know he's a tank, but I'm pretty sure he's an off tank. So, your Roadhog, your Zarya, D.Va, mostly D.Va in this meta, but some Hog, and occasionally Zarya, depending on the map. So they do have those reinforcements in. I always thought that their main problems is kind of like a little bit their main tank. Nomi, he seems kind of disconnected sometimes from the rest of the team, and Dahak as well. He really struggled on Mercy in Stage 1, the Mercy meta. He was probably their number one reason. He was their number one reason for their struggles. Just like dying a lot, popping Valkyrie at awkward times, because he's a Lucio main. He's a Lucio player. Mercy is not something that he really loves to play. You can tell. So now that he doesn't have to play Mercy nearly as much, you can tell that Deck's been playing a lot better. The Shock have been playing a lot better. But I don't know. At this point, I don't know. They would have to go on a big run. Maybe they put in Super and Sinatra, and it's like a huge morale boost, and they just start tearing off some wins. But something like that is going to be needed for them to stay in it. And then the other team in that category, the Fuel, they're just wildly inconsistent. I mean, they had a couple matches in Stage 2 when they beat the Gladiators. They looked very good. When they played really close to the Dynasty in Stage 2 as well. So I think that was the same week where they beat the Gladiators and they narrowly lost to Seoul. They looked really good, but then this last week again. Didn't look very good. They lost 3-0 to the Shock. A lot of people thought that they'd win that. They also lost to the Valiant, who are I mean, they're in the top 3 right now. So they're going to be 4 soon. But yeah, they haven't really been able to put it all together consistently. I think that they might have to. My personal opinion on the Fuel is maybe a coaching change. Maybe I don't know about getting rid of Kai Kai, but maybe changing his role. Getting someone else to introduce like different strats, because it just a lot of times their composition and their strats just like don't really make sense. I thought that was the case a lot of the time in the Shock match. They also kind of like they went to a comp that kind of favors AKM, their new acquisition for Stage 2. Their soldier player, one of the best soldiers in the world. He's extremely good, but they become very predictable with that kind of lineup. And you had Effect having some very uncharacteristic games where he wasn't really being effective and dying a lot of the time. Just weird. So I think if you feel you gotta like keep experimenting, trying to see what's best for you. I really don't like Taimuin as the main tank. I think that's been terrible. I think XQC and Coco are both better in every way, and there are rumors that they're going for a Korean main tank, which is very interesting. That could mean bad things for Taimu and or XQC. And because especially with like all the drama concerning XQC suspension, everything like that, so they're a very interesting team. They have these huge personalities. They have a lot of players now. So, and if they're going to bring in another one, like where does that leave the other main tanks? I mean, you already have two in Coco and XQC. You're kind of turning Taimu into one, and then it's like, they're just kind of a team in limbo right now. And if they don't figure out something fast, they're going to be out of contention pretty soon. Which, yeah, I don't know, because they're a team that they don't have a lot of like Korean players, and you got like they have Effect, they have Rascal, who they acquired from the Spitfire, who's also Korean. But other than that, they're a pretty diverse team. I mean, they have Siegel the American, Harry Hook Spanish. They have a lot of other people like the Taimu. He's from Finland. He's Finnish. Or is he Swedish? He's one of the two. I always forget. But they have a lot of different people. I believe Mickey's from. I forget where he's from, but it's not Korea. It's not China. I don't want to even guess because I don't want to get it wrong. But they're just a very diverse team, and because of that, I mean, maybe because of that, they've just struggled to find their footing. And they have the talent, they have the players. If they do find something that really works for them and get into a groove, you could see them jump into it and make things very interesting. But if they don't find that pretty soon, they could lose a lot more matches. And if they do, maybe you're thinking maybe that they blow up the team a little bit. And personally, I don't want to see that. Maybe they want to just bring in a Korean team at that point, which I think would be terrible for Overwatch League if they start doing that with some of these teams that are struggling. Like the Mayhem, they're an all EU basically team, and like if most or all of them got replaced and they just brought in a bunch, like another team of Koreans, I like the diversity in Overwatch League a lot. So hopefully that doesn't happen. Hopefully some of these teams can start winning some matches. And then moving on to there's a couple teams that are like they're gonna be fighting for the back spots, and right there I have the Gladiators, I have the Uprising, and I have the Fusion. These three teams are gonna be the ones that are fighting for like the 6th spot basically. They're gonna be like fringe playoff teams, I think, by the end of the year. So the Gladiators in map differential, they're 1 behind Fusion, and they're a couple. Their record is 2 behind them, and they're 1 behind the Uprising record-wise. But these teams going forward, I think they'll be very close. The Fusion, I think the Fusion's biggest problem is they just have a lack of adaptability. They're like the best dive team, I'd probably say, in the league, but when they get countered, they don't really know what to do. They don't really know how to adjust. So I think the biggest thing for them is they need to work on their like adaptability, different strategies, maybe getting some other players on other things, and just Yeah, having more strategies, because they're just too predictable at this point for them. I think talent-wise, they're up there with all the rest of the teams, but if they continue to only have like this one or like two strategies that they can kind of rely on, I think they might get into some trouble. I mean, that's their -1 map differential. They've been 4-0'd a lot. And it just shows when teams figure out a way to deal with them, they don't know how to in turn adapt and make some changes. Like the poster child for that is the Dynasty. The Dynasty are very, very, very good at adjusting in game, and the Fusion, if they can do that, if they can find some ways to adapt and really combat other teams' changes, then I think that they should be the team in over the Uprising and the Gladiators, just based on pure talent-wise. But the Uprising were very good in Stage 1. They opened up Stage 2 very badly with some losses, but they looked better now. They took care of business against the Dragons, and they did beat the Mayhem for the other one. So their two match wins in Stage 2 are against the lower tier teams, but it's still good to get wins. I mean, winning any match in Overwatch League is good, and so yeah, they're a very interesting case. They play today, actually. They play against the Spitfire. So I think in the coming weeks we're going to see a lot from the Uprising. They could be a team that could be up there competing for like 6 and maybe even like 5 area towards the end of the year, or I could see them falling to like 10th. So they're a very interesting team. I won't go into a whole lot of detail about them right now because I've already spent a lot of time on this. And then there's the Gladiators, who are 7 and 8. I think their biggest disadvantage right now is that they're just a little bit behind, like record-wise, than the other guys. In Stage 1, they were just a mediocre team. They brought in Fissure, and they've been a million miles better. I think at this point now, their biggest issue is just inconsistent DPS play. Asher is at times one of the best tracers in the world, and at times he's just kind of like, wait, where's Asher? Is Asher in this game? He is playing. I didn't know. It's the same thing with Hydration. He used a Dragon Blade last match against the Valiant on Hanamura, where the Valiant had numbers on the Gladiators, and when he popped it, I'm going, no, that's a terrible blade. That's a terrible blade. But he dives in the back. He kills, I believe, the soldier. He kills. Then he sees the D.Va has gotten knocked out of mech and used his ult. He used self-destruct to get his mech back. So, but before the self-destruct goes off, he slashes over to the mini D.Va, kills her, ducks into the little house outside of Point A on Hanamura, and avoids the bomb. And then, as his blade runs out, promptly deflects the charged Zenyatta shots to kill the Lucio, and then dives and kills the Zen. And it was like, whoa, that was insane. But then he has his Dragon Blades where he just kind of like slashes towards one person, doesn't kill him, and then just kind of like stands around, because once you slash with Genji and you don't get a kill, you're kind of SOL. you're really shut out of luck. So just very inconsistent, especially on the Genji. There's times when Hydration looks like one of the better Genjis, and then there's times where it's like, oh god, what are you doing? And I think Surefour is definitely more consistent than the other two, DPS wise, but he doesn't have that many like highs. There are times in Stage 1, there was a couple of like maps where he just carried as McCree. There was a couple where he did extremely well on Tracer, but he's more of you're going to get good performance every time, but he's not going to carry you that often. He's not going to just put the whole team on his back. He's more of a player that's like steady. So I just think if they can I really like what I saw from them last match. They were a lot more cohesive. Their dives were really good. Like, that was the one thing that they were not really good at in Stage 1. Their dives weren't really well coordinated sometimes. In this stage, they've looked a lot better with Fissure. So if they can just get that, if they can get a little more adaptability, they've already shown they have some good adaptability, which is great. But if they can just start to get a little more consistency from Asher and Hydration, I think that they could definitely be around the 5-6 region. They play the Spitfire tomorrow, and I believe the next week their first matchup is against the Outlaws. So you're going to find out a lot about them as well pretty soon. And then you got your top 5. You got your Outlaws, Spitfire, Valiant, Excelsior, and Dynasty. I don't think any of these guys are dropping out of the top 5. I'd say if any team had, I don't know, I would say definitely the Valiant before, but they did 4-0 the Outlaws yesterday, and the Outlaws have looked a bit shaky the last couple weeks. So we'll see going forward. I think the Outlaws are going to right the ship. I think they just had a little bit of time. They've had a little bit of a hard time adjusting to the new meta. But I think once they do kind of like get it packed down, once they get their DPSs more in line with the rest of the team, I think that they're going to shoot back up to like the 3 or 4, or at least stay where they are. So, yeah, I think those 5 stand pat. I think unless like something huge changes, they're in good shape for the playoffs. But we shall see moving forward. I think some teams like the Fusion, the Gladiators, they could make things interesting, and I really hope they do. I hope that it's not like a clear-cut top like 6-ish, and then there's not much of a struggle for the playoffs. So yeah, I think I've talked about that for far too long. But standings and things like that with the map differentials are really fascinating to me. So real quick, we're gonna fly through these predictions. I'm not gonna spend too much time on them. I'm not even going to say the maps that they're playing on. London Spitfire, Boston Uprising. So, Spitfire have had a long time to sit and wait. The Uprising played last night. They had a pretty easy 4-0 victory against the Dragons. Do they get this easy 4-0 victory against the Spitfire? No, they do not. The Spitfire take this one 3-1. I don't know. I might try to watch this game because it's going to be very interesting. Think we're going to find out a lot about the Uprising. If they just get 4-0'd, that might tell the story about what they're going to be. But if they can put up a good fight, which I think they should put up a good fight, then they'll continue to be a team that we talk about. We didn't think we would at the beginning of the year, but they're gonna be a team that's in that playoff conversation. They're right there. I mean, they're literally a match behind Fusion, so that one should be very good. This and the next matchup, New York Excelsior against the Philadelphia Fusion, should also be great. So the Fusion have lost their last couple matches after starting out Stage 2 3-0. They've lost their last 2. Excelsior, I think, will take this one. They've had some time. They haven't played yet this week. I think they're going to be really rested and ready to go. You saw the Spitfire really knew how to shut down the Fusion when they played last week, and I think that there's going to be some carryover. I think Excelsior are looking at that tape going, okay, this is what we can do. So I think this is a very big match for the Fusion. If they get 4-0 again, your map differential is starting to suffer. You're at 9-7. The Uprising are either going to be still one behind you with a better map differential, or they'll be ahead of you if the Uprising do end up upsetting the Spitfire. And then you got the Gladiators still kind of breathing down your throats a little bit. And then if the Shock or Fuel win their next match too, they'd only be a couple behind. So I think the Fusion definitely, they have to start finding a way to make these matches closer and at least not get 4-0'd. Do I think they'll get 4-0'd though? They did take one against the Dynasty yesterday, which I was decently impressed with. So I think it's going to be the same thing. I think the Fusion are going to continue to make strides, but I don't think they're ready to go toe-to-toe with the Excelsior yet. I think this one, it goes 3-1 New York. And then the final match of today, Florida Mayhem facing off against the Houston Outlaws. 1-13 Mayhem, 9-6 Outlaws. So I think the Outlaws, they're going to be really pissed about how they played yesterday. They really just across the board did not play well. They looked not even really like a team half the time out there. And I think they're going to bounce back hard. They're going to crush the Mayhem 4-0. The Mayhem a lot of times get to take a map against most teams. That's one thing that I admire about them. They don't give up. They don't give in for the easy 4-0. So I think that they will definitely put up a fight. But I think the Outlaws are going to be too much for them with their... I want to see them come out like angry. I want to see them come out with some fire. Even though they're playing a lower tier team, They've lost three matches in a row. They've fallen from 2nd to 5th. I think they're going to be pissed about that, and they're going to get their 10th win of the season. So then moving on to Saturday, the first match, back to the London Spitfire. They're matching up against the Gladiators. So I'm not going to pick Gladiators this time. I looked at the Valiant matchup and I said this is very winnable for us. It's very losable as well, and they played really well. They got the 4-0. I was super, super proud of them. But I don't think they're ready to beat the Spitfire yet. If they play like they did against the Valiant, and the Spitfire don't come out with a bunch of energy, I think this could be a very interesting matchup, though. I'm gonna say 3-1 Spitfire with at least 3 of the maps, if not all 4 of them, being really close. But yeah, the Spitfire have come out lazy sometimes. If they do that, the Gladiators could jump on them and get a map early, and then maybe we go to 5. Maybe we see. But yeah, I'm excited for that matchup. I will be watching it. Hopefully the Gladiators come out and perform and make that a close one. Then we got the Excelsior going against the San Fran Shock. So San Francisco got a big win against the Fuel last 2 days ago. Or was that yesterday? Either way, it was 2 days ago. But do I think they'll carry that over to a win against the Excelsior? No. I think this one's going to be a 4-0. I think New York will take care of business here. Right now, if they win both of their matchups, they'll be back in first with a pretty solid map differential too. They'll be looking real solid. And also for the stage 2 playoffs, they kind of need 2 wins here. If they drop one, then they'll be right in the mix with some of the other teams. So I think they're going to be real prepared for these 2 matchups, and they're going to win them both with relative ease. I think the Fusion match will definitely be tougher for them, but they take this one 4-0 in my eyes. Then you got the Mayhem going up against the Dallas Fuel for the last matchup. So, I say this is like a must-win for the Fuel, and it definitely is the must-win. You can't lose against the Mayhem. But, for the Mayhem, it's like this is a matchup that maybe you can take, or a chance, or a match that they have a better chance at. So, we'll see. I think the Fuel take this one, though. The Mayhem, last time I saw them against the Uprising, I predicted the upset, and it really didn't go well. I was kind of disappointed in them. But yeah, I think this one will be pretty close. I think the Fuel will take it 3-1. I think Florida takes map 3. Alright, so Dallas goes into the break up 2-0. Mayhem win the 3rd map to force Fuel to win the 4th one to close out the series. And I think in a close matchup, the Fuel will close out on map 4 and take this one 3-1. Kind of similar to their Shanghai match in stage 2. But yeah, I think Florida gives them a run, but Fuel take the win and improve to 6-10. So there's the predictions. There's what I think about the standings. Who I think is going to be contending towards the end of the year. Oh, man, my mouth is dry. I'm going to go get some water. And then after I get some water, I'll see you guys in the very next video.